gloomy day, the kind that creeps up on you and leaves you feeling really tired. In just a few minutes, everything I thought I had under control turned into a mess. Now, all I could do was wait, feeling nervous and wondering if the worst would happen. But I wasn't the type to dwell on my mistakes. I was raised to never give up. My old sergeant always told me that taking action is the best way to handle things. If I couldn't fix the situation, I could at least hold on to my dignity. Even if everything was falling apart, I still had my pride. Luckily, I got some important info the day before, which gave me a bit of time to get ready. So, there I was sitting in my friend's car, hidden in a dark spot of a motel parking lot. I had heard my wife was coming that day, and I nervously watched for her red convertible. It didn't take long. She showed up. Right behind her was the guy she had chosen, an arrogant guy in a flashy car. He parked next to her, said a few words, and went inside to check in. This was my moment. I slipped out of the car, approached hers, and got into the unlocked passenger seat. She gasped in shock. "Connor, what are you doing here?" Keeping my cool, I handed her a brown envelope and said, "Nothing much, just delivering the divorce papers to my soon-to-be ex-wife. Enjoy your time with the real man, and don't worry about coming home." Her face turned pale, and she stammered, "No, you've got it all wrong. This isn't what you think. Let me explain. There's no betrayal. I promise," she said, but I didn't want to listen. "I want a divorce, Margaret. I don't care about you or that guy who just wanted to get the room key for your little trip. Be with him if you want. I'm done." Tears started falling from her eyes. It was clear that her fantasy with her so-called lover was falling apart. Just then, her lover came back, proudly waving the room key. He saw me, confused, and asked, "Who's this? What did he do to you?" Calmly, I got out of the car, pulling a small plastic bottle from my pocket. As I walked toward him, Margaret sobbed, "This is my husband, and he's divorcing me because of this." Angrily, the man shouted, "I'll teach him a lesson for thinking like that." He came toward me, but before he could do anything, I sprayed his face with a mix of water and shampoo. Blinded and furious, he stumbled back, screaming in pain. While he was disoriented, I took the next step in my plan, a homemade dart with 3 sharp points. I snuck up behind him and jabbed it into his backside, knowing it would stay there until a doctor could remove it. Leaving him behind, blinded by shampoo and with the dart stuck in him, I walked away as he cursed in pain. Margaret was still sitting in the car, sobbing uncontrollably. Without another word, I got back in my car and drove off. Whatever happened that day, one thing was clear. Their romantic evening was completely ruined. This was the beginning of the end for me. My name is Connor Smith. I'm 42 years old, married to Margaret, who is 40. We have 2 children, Emile, who's 12, and Estelle, who's 9. We've been together for 20 years, 16 of them in marriage. On the surface, we had that perfect life. A stable family and a cozy home. But happiness? We never truly had it. In my opinion, most of our problems in the marriage stemmed from Margaret's mother. She wasn't a monster in the literal sense, but her cruelty was relentless. From the moment we met, she made it clear she had no sympathy for me. It all began with what should have been an ordinary family dinner. What I thought would be a friendly gathering turned into an interrogation. After a barrage of questions, Margaret's mother announced, "I don't like your name. Connor is such a common name. People from decent families don't name their children Connor. Kenny, Ronnie, Molly, Nellie, or Cindy." I sat there, shocked by her boldness. What surprised me even more was that Margaret and her timid father stayed silent as she insulted me. That's when I realized the problem wasn't just between Margaret and me. Her family would always cause trouble. Sadly, those problems never went away. She started her speech by mentioning how the surname Smith was common among farming families and passed down for generations when traditions like that mattered. Then, she turned to Margaret, expressing her disappointment because she had hoped for a better future for her. This was especially because her other daughter, Natalie, was about to marry a man from a noble family. That was the last straw for me. I stood up and interrupted. "Isn't the father of that man an illegitimate child from a distant branch of the family's? And doesn't he live on welfare without a job?" Before anyone could respond, I added, "I need some air." I turned to Margaret and asked, "Will you come with me?" To my surprise, She nodded, and we left together, escaping what I perceived as a hostile atmosphere. I had known Natalie's fiancé, Alexander, since school, and it didn't surprise me that he had convinced Margaret's peculiar mother that perfect match for Natalie. His charm was deceptive, but I couldn't care less. I wasn't invited to their grand wedding, which suited me just fine. I had no desire to attend. The only thing that truly mattered to me was my relationship with Margaret. Over time, it deepened, perhaps too much, as it eventually led to an unexpected pregnancy. When Margaret's mother found out, she was furious, hurling insults over the phone and making it clear that she would not be paying for the wedding. But we didn't care. We opted for a small ceremony with close friends and family. After the wedding, we both found excellent jobs in a city more than 30 miles away from our hometowns, which meant that I had minimal contact with her mother. Margaret's mother poured all her energy and resources into Natalie and Alexander. Shortly after the wedding, Margaret had a miscarriage, but we weathered that loss together. 3 years later, we had a son and then a daughter. Our life with 2 children was peaceful and successful. We earned well, bought a beautiful home, and built a strong circle of friends. Our relationship remained physically fulfilling, and the distance from Margaret's family minimized their influence. Her parents never visited us, and on the rare times we went back home, I spent time with my family while Margaret visited hers. Over time, even Alexander got fed up with his controlling mother-in-law. His career was going well, and when he got a new job that required him to move nearly 50 miles away, he accepted it happily. After several big arguments, Alexander gave Natalie an ultimatum. Either she moved with him, or they would get divorced. She decided to go with him, and once they left, Margaret's mother suddenly remembered she had another daughter, Margaret. Margaret's mother started calling every day, constantly criticizing me or talking about how perfect Alexander and Natalie's life was. Our relationship started to suffer under this pressure. I told Margaret that the real reason Alexander moved away was to get away from her toxic mother, but that only made our fights worse. Things got even more complicated when a new man appeared at Margaret's work, someone who was distantly related to an aristocratic family. She began to admire him, calling him a real man or even Superman, clearly comparing him to me. This man was married, but his wife worked abroad as a nurse in Asia and was due to return in a few months. They were planning to buy a house when she returned, but for now he lived nearby, renting a room from his sister-in-law. Margaret's constant praise of him became unbearable for me. She criticized everything I did, from the way I talked to the way I dressed, always hinting that he was better at everything. Naturally, I couldn't win in these comparisons. Although our physical relationship continued, her enthusiasm noticeably waned. She started making comments like, "Again?" or "Don't you ever get tired?" If it weren't for our children and Margaret's many good qualities, I might have left long ago. She remained faithful, a great mother, a talented cook, and always took care of herself. We were a good team when it came to running the household and working in the garden. But her constant critical remarks and sharp words turned the woman I once adored into someone distant and unfamiliar. I wasn't the type to silently endure. I responded to her jabs, and our arguments only got worse. One evening, after the children were already asleep, she made another snide remark. "I wish you were more like my colleague." That was the final straw. My anger flared up. "If you're so in love with that guy, why don't you just run away with him? But if you cheat on me while we're still married, you won't get away with it. If he's bold enough to start something with you, I'll make sure he knows it won't come for free." Margaret exploded in anger, screaming, "You pathetic piece of trash. How dare you think of me that way? You'll regret this, mark my words." I calmly replied, "Wouldn't it be better if he paid instead of you?" She screamed at me in fury, but before she could insult me more, our 2 scared and crying children ran toward us. My focus immediately shifted to calming them down as best as I could. After her outburst of anger, we entered a 2-week stretch of cold silence. On the first weekend, she took the kids to her parents, and on the next, we had guests, Natalie and Alexander. While they were with us, Margaret played the role of a loving wife and behaved affectionately towards me. But as soon as our guests left on Sunday morning, her attitude changed. As soon as we said goodbye to the guests, Margaret turned to me and said, "Don't think I'll be doing you any more favors." The situation only worsened by the day. By Thursday, I received an unexpected call at work from one of Margaret's colleagues. After introducing herself, she got straight to the point. "We've got a new guy in the office, very attractive, and now 3 of us, including your wife, are competing for his attention." We tried to remind her that she's married to a good man, but she didn't back down. Now she's boasting that she's won him over and is planning to meet him tomorrow at a motel. I thanked her for the warning and asked her to keep the conversation between us so I could handle the situation myself. That evening when I returned home, Margaret seemed unusually cheerful, and I couldn't stop thinking about that phone call. I remembered something an old sergeant had once told me in the Army. He deeply admired the Apache warriors who were known for their sudden ambushes. They would strike quickly and vanish into the desert. I wasn't one for physical violence, so I decided my best option was to use the element of surprise. Margaret once bragged that her lover had a black belt in some martial art, so I knew catching him off guard would be crucial. Ideally, I would have used pepper spray, but since it was illegal in our country, I had to improvise. After some thought, I settled on a small bottle of diluted shampoo. I tested it on myself and found it worked well. The sergeant had once talked about how much fear Apache arrows with barbed heads caused during the border wars. Even though I couldn't use a bow and arrows, his story gave me an idea, so I headed to my workshop in the basement. I found an old dartboard and started working. I attached small sewing needles at an angle to the ends of the darts to give them a barbed effect. Pulling these darts out of soft tissue would likely require a hospital visit. I didn't test them on myself, so I hoped they'd work when needed. My plan was simple and didn't need any special tools. I planned to serve Margaret and her lover with divorce papers, temporarily blind him, and then stick one of the barbed darts into his backside. I figured he wouldn't want to continue the affair after that. The next morning, Margaret dressed provocatively, but I pretended not to notice, and we had an ordinary Friday morning. Later at work, I swapped cars with my friend and colleague Eric, as we often did when he needed to use my larger vehicle. That morning, I stopped by the courthouse to pick up the divorce papers and filled them out during my work break. I was also able to contact the lover's wife, getting her email through a charity in Asia, and planned to inform her about the affair. During my lunch break, I drove past Margaret's office and saw both her car and her lover's in the parking lot. It was clear they had lunch together and were heading to the motel. I bought a couple of hot dogs and drove to the motel to wait for their arrival. As expected, they arrived, and my plan unfolded exactly as I had envisioned. My time in the Army had not been wasted, and I mentally thanked that old sergeant for his valuable lessons. Around 5:30 that day, I got another call from the woman who had told me about Margaret's affair. She asked, "Were you at the motel today? Did you find what you were looking for?" I replied, "Yes, I was there, but it seems my wife and her colleagues didn't like seeing me." I tried to lighten the mood by handing Margaret the divorce papers, but that didn't help. Her lover got aggressive, and I had to defend myself. Let's just say he's now nursing some injuries in the lower part of his body, and I believe my wife took him to the hospital. In a dry tone, I added, "It wasn't exactly a romantic getaway for them, but yes, everything happened just as you heard. I have no reason to make this up." My wife still hadn't returned, so I suggested to the woman on the phone that she try to contact her directly. "Try calling her mobile," I said, adding, "but I can't guarantee you'll get the whole truth from her." The woman thanked me and asked for Margaret's number, which I gave without hesitation. I hoped their conversation would be civil. Then I sent a letter to the woman in Asia, the wife of Margaret's so-called real man, explaining the entire situation in detail. At 6 in the evening, Margaret entered the house, and I immediately knew she was furious. She glared at me and sharply said, "We need to talk right now." I was ready. "Did you get everything you wanted from your lover?" I said, "But if you thought I'd stand idly by while and he made a fool of me, you've gone mad." "No, Margaret, I wasn't going to allow my dignity to be trampled on. Even if he didn't physically harm you, you hurt him enough that I had to take him to the hospital," she said, "and you'll pay for that. Actually, we'll all pay for this. 4 adults and 2 children will share the burden of the chaos you've created with this guy," I added. "And if you think his poor wife in Asia is okay after reading my letter, think again." Now she knows exactly who she married. Margaret's voice rose. Did you really send that letter to his innocent wife? That's cruel. She looked shocked just hearing the word divorce. I didn't threaten you with anything, I calmly said. Just sign the divorce papers, and in 6 months, you'll have your freedom and a fair deal. I warned her that if she tried to drag it out with a lawyer, it would only cost her more, and the outcome would be the same. Reality began to hit her, and her eyes filled with tears. My God, are you really serious? Please listen to me. I haven't done anything wrong. I cut her off. Yes, you have. You took your domineering mother's side and her disdain for me just because I don't come from a wealthy family. You let her manipulate you into becoming a nagging wife. And then you started flirting with a colleague whom you've always considered superior to me, as you often said. I know you were competing with 2 other colleagues for the attention of this so-called real man. Then you left work early and went to a motel with him, cheating on me with a married man. You know how I feel about infidelity, so there's no misunderstanding about what comes next. Margaret cried even harder. I didn't cheat on you today or ever. I only love you. What about our children? She pleaded. The children are the only reason I didn't kick you out long ago. I replied, every day, I hear how I'm not good enough from you and your mother compared to this real man you were infatuated with. I know about the motel, I know about your plans, and I am deeply humiliated. I won't participate in this farce any longer. She realized the show was over, and we began discussing the divorce. Eventually, Margaret signed the papers, but with one condition, that we continue living in the same house and refrain from dating anyone else until the divorce was finalized in 6 months. It's been 6 weeks since I confronted Margaret about her near affair. Strangely, our marriage has taken an unexpected turn. Margaret now seems like a completely different, much better wife. It's as if she's forgotten how she used to treat me, like I didn't matter. We've started acting more politely toward each other, even spending more time together than we did in the months before everything came out. Of course, we don't share the same bed or even the same room anymore, but I don't miss the fake affection she used to show. As strange as it sounds, I actually believe her when she says she never crossed the line with that man. It seems their motel meeting was meant to start an affair, but they hadn't gone that far yet. As for him, his wife filed for divorce and left him with nothing. She recently wrote to me saying he's doing okay and that she's forgiven him. We still have 20 weeks left until the final divorce, and I'm not sure if I want to try and save our 16-year marriage. If she tried to cheat once, she'd probably do it again. When it was time to finalize the divorce, I signed the papers and ended things with Margaret. The only thing that made me sad was knowing I'd only see the kids on weekends. But that's life. I visited them on the weekends, but it didn't last long. One autumn evening, I got a call from the police saying Margaret had been driving drunk, and the worst part was that our kids were in the car, putting them in danger. After that, Child Services gave me full custody of the kids. As for Margaret, a year later, she was no longer the same person. She spent the whole year spiraling into heavy drinking. She was punishing herself, and in the end, my revenge wasn't even needed. Second story. I'm a 25-year-old man, and to keep it short, I loved a girl for 3 years, believing she loved me back. I gave her my heart and did everything I could to support her. She pretended to love me, used me, and even accepted my wedding proposal while knowing she had no intention of marrying me. When she no longer needed me, she cheated on me, insulted me, and made fun of me. She even took my wedding ideas and used them for her wedding with the guy she cheated with. That was 3 years ago, and they just got married a couple of weeks ago. I'm heartbroken. I've been trying to move on and forget her, but everything reminds me of her, and I feel like I'll always be missing a part of myself. I tried looking for another girl, but honestly, I'm not attracted to anyone anymore, and I don't feel like any girl is worth the effort. She was my first love, and I feel like I'll never love anyone as much again. Is it true that first love is the strongest? Has anyone ever managed to love someone more than their first love? If so, how do you open up again? How do you fall in love after all this pain?